Hi, welcome to part six of my look at the collected archives from Kenny Norris. Now, uh, this sort of chapter, the Epic Campaign Starter, is a big chapter, and I'm not going to grind my way through all of it. It's certainly worth reading, and yeah, there's some good ideas in it. Now, Kenny uses his EPIC acronym for external factors, place, intrigue, and character. Um, now, I've come across this before, but it was called Spice. So they put an S in there, and that was for style or story. Um, so which kind of incorporate all the ideas of your play style and the sort of genre mood uh, of, of the game. So yeah, it's not a particularly new idea, but this one is uh, comes down to the four and the I think that the kind of the mood genre style comes into external factors in this one. But before I dive into what Kenny wrote, I want to give a couple of thoughts. Now, for 10, 11 years or so, I worked with adults with specific learning needs. And the way we worked was what we called student led teaching or student led learning. And you put the student at the center of everything. So when you were planning sort of the teaching, there was no point in having putting the teaching in times or places where your student couldn't get to. So you planned the sessions to the students' needs. When you were planning the sort of the learning objectives and the activities, you didn't. It wasn't what the teacher was wanted to teach. It was what the student needed to learn in the order the student needed to learn it and at the pace. When were introducing new ideas? When were you reinforcing? But it all came down to the student-led approach, and the ultimate goal of the learning was one that the student wanted to achieve, not what the organization needed the students to achieve to tick the boxes and get the funding. So we all worked on this student-led approach. And eventually it would all converge because if you taught the students what they needed to know, then they would have the skills to then, say, achieve the qualifications that the organization needed. But still, it was all student led. Now, you can take that approach to solo play and you can do an exercise where you put yourself at the center of a sort of mind map or scatter diagram or cluster diagram, whatever they call them, um, and say, kind of, for me, what do I need to make my games work? Now, it could be about timing. Maybe you come home from a stressed day at work and your solo play is a way to escape. The way other people turn on TV, you can turn on your solo play. But it might be that if you come home stressed from work, the last thing you want to do is to solo play. Um, Maybe you need the entire dining room table to be clear, so you can put out your maps and your generators and rules and character sheets, and you just want to have that space. So trying to solo play when the kids have got to do their homework and that sort of thing isn't going to work for you. So you can you look at, say, the external factors that are stopping you from playing and what space do you need. If you're doing it all on a laptop, you don't need much space, but you might want peace and quiet. Um, you, you yeah, there's all kinds of factors that can stop you from actually enjoying getting to play and enjoying your play. But you can do the same thing and put your character at the center of and do a completely character led game. So if you want to play a particular type of character, um, that could come down to a character class or a profession or a species. Um, it could completely change the nature of the game. If you want to play a Middle Earth game but you want to play an orc, then you could easily put that character in the forges below Orthanc, and there's a whole kind of, yes, the war may be going on around you, but I've forgotten the dude's name that was you know, the wizard on top of Orthanc. Saruman, isn't it? Right, yeah. So he may have not called you to war, but there's all this kind of political sort of infighting amongst the orcs, and maybe there's different factions within the orcs, and there's different roles within the orcs, and there may be news coming in from outside, and you could play an entire campaign within the confines of Orthanc, and not you step out into the world until you're ready to do so, and then you've got a mission, you know, and you can lift that straight out of Lord of the Rings. Know your mission, how that it played out for your character. You play to find out, but you can. It, so having your character at the center, it's what sort of game do you want to play? What kind of stories do you want that character to play? What is that character? What's interesting to them? You can throw all these ideas into this mix. Create this mind map of all these inputs to your character, and then looking at that, you can take the best bits, and that becomes the game, and you play to find out what happens. So that's kind of how I think of new games, new campaigns. It's all character led. Now, what Kenny's doing here is campaign led. This came up in the last video about the all the campaign planning. Everything you're going to read in this epic chapter, if you pick up these the collected archives, is all about building a big structure around a campaign, and it dives into kind of, here we've got the inspirations and the kind of ideas of the story you want to tell, and the story from the spice version that I know comes up in this of sort of as an external factor. It's seen as kind of you imposing a story on the genre. Um, so there's you got these external factors which again are all feeding into the campaign. The game mechanics, choosing the game you're going to play, and the rules you're going to play, and of the random generators you're going to use. These are all going to feed into the campaign, and they're going to influence the style of the campaign, the setting. Now, my settings are often kind of the actual location the scenes take place in are in in detailed focus, clear focus, and everything else of that gets kind of soft focus and a bit blurry. I don't really need to know if I'm adventuring in 2020 in Ireland, then I can kind of imagine what the world's like. I know what the world's like. I know what's going on. Um, but the actual hotel my character is staying in, and the archaeological dig he's working with on, and the restaurant he goes to, these I want to imagine in detail. Everything beyond that can be kind of vaguely hazy. And if I'm doing a dungeon crawl, the four walls of the room are important, because that's where I'm going to be checking for traps, or that's where the is going to be stuff scratched onto the walls, or there's going to be piles of bones in the corners. That's fine detail. Beyond that, in a solo game, I may not need to know, or I may not need to know until I need to know. So I don't really feel this need to plan this stuff right from the start. Um, and Kenny's diving more, ever more into setting specific details. Um, now, I think you can often generate these completely randomly. You just make a yes no roll based upon you know the likelihood for you know is it high technology, low technology? Roll your dice, and it you can create completely random worlds in seconds just by having a few you know concepts like that, and just drill down until you're dealing with the actual details your character's interested in and experiencing. Um, so now with the groups and things, it groups like factions and power bases and superpowers and it, it could be interesting to detail them all if they're directly related to what I'm playing. you know I don't want to have to detail all of that sort of stuff for a world or for a country, or even just a region, uh, before I get to play. But Kenny obviously has this real strong sense of, he likes his campaign structure. If you watch my previous video, you saw his cluster diagram of, all the ideas that were going to go into his campaign, and the stuff he likes, making the campaign, ticking as many boxes as possible, which is absolutely great. Um, Creating all this sort of stuff in advance, I find it too constraining. But he does pick out John Ford's, that's roleplayingtips.com, the three line NPC method. They are very, very good. Not just for the epic campaign style, but just for you know, creating an NPC pretty quickly. Um, in my modern age campaign, you know, I created a rival and I created an ex-lover, just on the fly as I needed them, because the dice suggested they should exist. And so where I started off, all I was really focusing on was a single table in the restaurant. The world grew out of that as I played. And it was just a simple roll. Did I know someone at Oxford University? Then I rolled, and there was a kind of a but involved, and the situation inspired the NPCs rather than trying to plan all this stuff in advance. Um, Now, the intrigue, I often think of that going right from the kind of the style genre, the S of spice, and the story element, uh, rather than being something external to it. But then it's just the same ideas are coming up. It's just a different order, a different way of thinking. And the same comes with the conflict. And now finally we get to kind of the stories. So yeah, and Kenny's building up his idea more and more, that he's used, and you got a random generator that's coming. He's using Rory story cubes. I like zero dice. They all do the same thing. Um, and I think that was. Oh no, no, we're still going. Finally, we get to the character. Now, for me, the character would have been the start. Everything would have been built around the character. If I build a rogue, I want roguish style adventures. I don't want to be thrown onto the front line of a mass battle, because that's not the character, the right character for that story. And in my solo games, I am the star. I am the hero. So yeah, I find I'm just working on a different kind of wavelength here. And I think the difference could be that Kenny's very much a writer, whereas I'm more of a um, I like doing, if in writing terms, I would be doing short stories, he would be doing novels. If you're doing a novel, you need a big coherent world. If you write a novel and if you and you get facts wrong, um, your readers will say, "Well, hang on, you said this at the beginning and you're saying this now." Um, Whereas in short stories, it's much you, you can just let the reader assume so much more about what's going on behind. So again, Kenny's working very much at this big picture, kind of create the whole world that the adventure is going to take place in as a kind of structure. Um, and as we go through, he's um, building up this idea, you know, showing you how it works for his campaigns. Um, so yeah, and there's a link here which I'm not sure if that still exists. Uh, I remember years ago it did. I thought it might be throwing up a 404 now. Um, but oh no, it is still there. If I just bring that across, here is the oh, if I can get rid of the ignore that. So yeah, he goes through the entire thing, building an epic campaign outline, and that alone is you know, it's worth reading it in conjunction with the actual article. Um, I personally don't want to do that much work before I start a game, but it's horses for courses. It may work for you. It isn't really uh, my way of thinking, but it's just because every soloist is unique. All our games have to just suit ourselves, nobody else. But there's a lot of good content in there. It's just a case of what's most important to you. You know, Kenny's putting his campaign and the game setting and world right at the center of it all. I like to put my characters at the center and just deal with what the character needs and then play from there. So yeah, that's it. It's a really good long read article. The example is very good. Um, I definitely recommend reading it, but it's not my way of working. But yeah, thank you for watching.